Greetings and salutations. Welcome again to another episode of the Snarp Fangle Podcast. David here, and joining me is a very special guest. We got, once more, Nick Kringle.
Hey.
What's up?
Hey, you guys.
How you been?
Been good. Been busy. Crazy hectic. It's that time of year. Spring is in the air.
Oh, yeah.
Many different pull the main directions and getting everything all done. So.
Yeah. So we've got just kind of a, anything goes sort of podcast for you guys. So we're just going to hit on some topics we wanted to talk about, and hopefully it's entertaining.
Cover the gambit.
Yeah, so I guess let's
Start
just
at
go start at the top, I guess. So we got, I kind of wanted to talk about the movie Noah, because Nick's seen it before, and I finally just watched it. And after talking about some Book of Enoch stuff and diving into it, after we talked about it with Thad a couple times, I was like, I'm kind of curious now what they did with it, because, the Noah movie, of course, we're talking about the Russell Crowe. Yeah, Russell Crowe. I think it came out in 2014, something like that.
Yeah, something like that. Because I saw it, I didn't see it in theaters or anything like that, but yeah, I saw it, came out in movies again. It was one of those slow days where I had nothing else to watch, and it, popped up. I'm like, oh, might as well check out, see why all the Christians are hating on it.
Yeah, and it's quite an interesting film, because according to the director, just the straight Noah story from the Bible didn't have much to it, so he's like, I gotta add some other things into it, spice it up somehow. And one of the things he did was kind of pull from the sort of Book of Enoch sort of mythology, brought in the idea of the Watchers and the line of Cain producing evil on the earth because of the knowledge that the Watchers gave to man and all that good stuff. So I finally watched it, and I have to say, it's actually pretty good. It's like I had no expectations going into it. I was like, I'm just, whatever this is, good, bad, or ugly, I just want to see what it is. And I was like, okay, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's not like the worst movie to say. It was definitely a little weird because, again, I haven't ever read the Book of Enoch, so even way back when I did watch it, I had no idea necessarily going into it. Again, I just knew that a lot of people disliked it for many of the different reasons. Because I think probably primarily because it brings in Book of Enoch, it brings in a lot more Jewish mythology and that type of thing. So, the hardline Christians are like, if it's not, it's claiming to be Bible and it's not Bible, and so. Again, it's a Hollywood, so I mean, they're going to at least do something with it as far as make it Hollywooded versus that. And so, like you said, if you just do the story of Noah, I mean, you could, but why not spice it up a little bit with some rock columns and all?
And honestly, like when the movie first came out, I had no idea. Like, I had heard of the Book of Enoch, but I had no idea what was in it. So when I heard there was rock creatures in the movie, I was like, what's going on here? But now, knowing what I know, it makes a lot of sense. So I was actually like, that was actually not the part I was worried about going into it, because I was like, the Book of Enoch kind of pairs with the flood story really well.
Okay.
Because, I mean, essentially, the Book of Enoch, the first one, not the second and third, are just like way out in left field. But the first one is essentially like Old Testament fan fiction.
Okay. It's a good way of describing it.
Yeah, so it's like just kind of bringing that sort of mythology into the story of Noah actually kind of makes a lot of sense from a storytelling perspective.
Oh, totally, yeah. And that's what you're trying to do in Hollywood. I mean, you're trying to tell more of a story versus, again, and you also look for something a little bit more edgy than, the last person who's done it, or and so you got to find ways to spice it up a little bit for the average goer.
The one thing that I was kind of concerned about, given the tone of like the first few minutes of the film, after like you see Lamech and Noah as a child, I was like, okay, is this gonna go like hardcore environmentalist
Yeah,
kind of a thing? And it's like, thankfully it didn't. It kind of went there, but not nearly as badly as it could have been. So that was one pitfall I was kind of concerned about. And then another pitfall I was kind of concerned about was Emma Watson is in this movie. And like she's like a hardcore feminist.
yeah.
And so I was like, are we gonna have some annoying girl boss moments? Because her character's just like an invention.
Yeah.
Like it's not from any. It's
yeah.
not from any mythology.
Total Hollywood.
Yeah, they just
we need
added,
a strong woman figure, so they'll throw her in there,
they just added her in there as the wife of Shem, and that was another thing that was kind of pleasantly surprised. Was like they did not make her into like a stereotypical sort of girl boss.
Oh, totally, yeah.
Her performance made her like her character and her performance made sense in the world of the film, even if it was just a straight up invention.
Totally. Yeah, it was weird too because again, like I said, I didn't necessarily know what went into it when I watched it back a long time ago, but it actually made more sense. I need to watch it again because I said I listened to an interview with Russell Crowe and he was going through kind of a little bit more of the artsy parts of it, which again I wouldn't have ever heard or recognized just watching it per se. I don't usually get into that part of it, so it'd be interesting going back and seeing it because like there's a point they were talking about where he said there's like Noah like kind of like a vision of himself in the crowd. You can see it, and he's like just like the worst form of himself, and he's like I can't remember, he's like gnawing on bones or something like that.
Yeah,
something like really weird that they which again I wouldn't have totally recognized it at all except for hearing his interview about it and him going a little bit more into depth into the video. So it's like because again I still haven't even now I haven't read Enoch, the Book of Enoch yet and stuff. I need to probably because it keeps coming up a lot more in conversations and stuff like that. So I kind of like I need to at least peruse it a little bit. But
yeah, I haven't read the whole thing. I've just read just enough to be dangerous.
Just enough to use the references. Yeah, fair.
Yeah, one thing that was kind of interesting about it too was like it talked about sin a lot, which is kind of weird for a Hollywood movie.
Yeah, totally.
And of course they turned it around. It was like, no, the creator chose you because there's goodness inside of you. But, so, I mean, but I was expecting that anyway.
Yeah.
But it was kind of interesting how it like, it really talks about sin, like Noah hammers on about how God showed him the evils of humanity and he understand and now so that he can understand why he's being asked to do what he's done, which is kind of interesting from a like you don't really get that sort of narrative in Hollywood movies a lot.
Yeah, usually they just kind of ignore sin, it's just part of life. That's just how people live, type thing. So make your own truth, blah, blah, blah.
People are essentially good. And it's like, no, no, they're not. But yeah, then the part where the movie kind of lost me was when Noah misunderstood the mission.
Yeah.
And somehow he wanted to murder his grandchildren.
He's like, we're all gonna die. Yeah, everybody's gotta die.
It was like, so it was kind of funny that they snuck in some like hardcore environmentalist narratives, but like they had Noah embody that and he was supposed to snap out of it at the end,
Yeah.
But it kind of weirded me out because I wasn't expecting it. And it's like, the movie really spends a lot of time like building up that Methuselah walked with God, or the creator as they call him in the movie, and Methuselah's son Lamech walked with the creator, and then Noah walked with the creator.
Yeah.
There was this it was really kind of building up this idea that out of all the people in the world, Noah should have been the one to know like who the creator was and what he was all about. So like the idea that just the stress of seeing the evils of humanity like that suddenly like stripped all that away, and now he thought the creator wanted humanity to just go extinct.
Yeah, he's just like, it's over, let's just end it all.
To the point where he's gonna like,
kill all of his own family.
Yeah, that was kind of like weird. And also they did Ham dirty.
Yeah.
Totally. I mean, I get Ham
ends up being the bad guy anyways.
Ham is kind of like done dirty in the Bible story anyway.
Yeah.
But at the very least, at the very least, he still has like a wife and children and a lineage, kind of a thing. It's like, for whatever reason, Ham's wife is just out of the story. And then he like, leaves at the end like, I don't belong here. I got to find my own way.
Yeah,
it's like where are you going to go?
Exactly. The whole world, everybody's dead.
There's nobody else in the entire world.
You're not going to like randomly stumble across some lady somewhere,
Yeah, what are you going to do out there? It's like, and they really tried to give it like a happy ending.
Yeah.
And like, it's a new beginning kind of a thing. Because you see like, obviously Noah's family kind of loses faith in him when they see him turn.
Yeah, get wasted too. Yeah.
So, after he finally kind of like comes to his senses, there is a moment of reconciliation there between him and his wife, and then he, passes the blessing down onto his children and his grandchildren, and it's like, oh, it's a happy ending, but Ham's just kind of gone. He's out of the picture.
Yeah.
It's like, okay.
It still gets the point across, I guess. But yeah, it's definitely more of a Hollywood way, I guess, of doing it.
Yeah. It's like, you could have, like, they even had a love interest for Ham. Like, you didn't really need the whole Tubal Cain sneaking on the boat.
Yeah, to bring in evil.
It's like, you didn't really need that. You could have just had Ham sneak his lady onto the boat.
Yeah, and then somebody to
have Noah be the villain.
Yeah,
because he was already going to be murderous anyway.
Yeah,
why not just have him be the villain when that they have him be the villain when he finds out that Ham snuck some lady on board the ark,
Maybe they want to do a sequel, and so they wanted to, the opportunity to have Ham as like another
Noah 2 Electric Boogaloo. It's like, what's that going to be? Ham wandering around all alone
by himself,
and then he just dies.
It goes into the Minecraft movie. No, he's like, yeah. I find a portal.
And then I thought it was really interesting that Methuselah was played by what's his name? Gosh, I
just had it. Let me say.
The Hello Clarice guy. Oh, what is his name?
Anthony Hopkins.
Anthony Hopkins. Yes, there we go. Yeah, that was not expecting that. Methuselah and Anthony Hopkins. Methuselah.
Never were in the image you saw in your mind, where you thought of Methuselah,
but. It was actually kind of cool. It was like, yeah, it wasn't what I was expecting, but he brought kind of a cool sort of aspect to Methuselah where like Methuselah is not really described in the Bible in any great deal. You don't actually really know anything about him
genealogy
other than how long he lived.
Yeah, exactly. And so, yeah, it's kind of weird, but you got to do something with it. Again, Hollywood doesn't mind exaggerating things and making up their own little twists to it. So
yeah, all in all, it was a pretty good film.
Like I said, I have to rewatch it because again, I don't really remember that. I kind of gonna want to read the Book of Enoch too before I do, just to kind of bring in a little more of the mythology parts into it. Cause it's funny because like I always kind of forget that there is like Jewish mythology because I take the Bible so literally, and seriously, it's like that, it is the word and all this stuff, and so I always forget that there's other aspects of Judaism or Israelites and stuff like that there's the bending spoons with your mind and all that other stuff that is out there, and so
all sorts of things.
Yeah.
Dude, the second and third books of Enoch are just like straight up wacko stuff. It's like, how did anyone come up with that? Like some of the Jewish mysticism stuff is just insanely weird. But like now that I kind of like understand what it's about, the Watchers actually make a lot of sense.
Okay.
Although it was kind of weird how it kind of turns them around into kind of like tragic figures.
Yeah.
Because in
kind of
the
misunderstood. Yeah.
Because in the Book of Enoch, the Watchers are the ones, are the angels in Genesis that desire to have human wives.
Yeah, and they kind of touch on that a little bit in the movie, but yeah, it's still.
But they don't like
weird.
But so they like turn it into like, oh, the Watchers just wanted to help humans.
Yeah, just trying.
But it wasn't their place to intervene, so the Creator punished them.
Yeah,
kind
for
of
helping. Yeah, because they made it much more like like a crime. They did something bad in that regard versus the Bible where it says they bred with women and all that. So it's
and it's like when you in the Book of Enoch too, it's like the Watchers have this narrative where it's more than just they got with human women. It's the Enoch story is like the Watchers are kind of jealous of humans.
Okay.
They look at all the things that God gave to humans for them to enjoy, and they're like, why don't we get any of that? So they kind of like, a bunch of them like sort of make a pact with each other that they're going to go down and
make some babies.
Yeah, make some babies to kind of reclaim to sort of kind of have a part of the blessing that God had given humanity.
Yeah, because that's always kind of the weird things with that whole little Nephilim, mentioned in the Bible and all that. It's like, because it does specifically say in other parts, that the angels are different than humans. So we're not they're not creating God's image per se. It doesn't specify. And it says like they're definitely different form than we are. And so there's always kind of the interesting conundrum with that. And again, apparently there wasn't a rule before that you two can't fraternize together or whatever. And so that's when God's finally like, all right, we're going to have to add this to the list of things not to do.
Yeah. Although, yeah, so that one thing that always kind of like weirded me out is like angels, from what I understand, are supposed to be like spiritual beings.
Yeah.
So it's like, how did they father children?
Yeah.
Kind of a thing.
So do they father other angels? And then, because obviously they got to have some sort of free will, because, if Satan was able, to try to cause havoc and stuff like that he, got kicked out of heaven, that it's like, some sort of free will like we do in that regard.
And then the movie glosses over that whole conundrum entirely. It presents them as beings of pure spirit, essentially. They called it light.
Yeah.
And then they fall to earth, and they're encased in the rock. And that's how they take physical form.
Which also would be kind of different because, again, man, created in clay, the form of clay or whatever. So it's like if you're angels, then we form of rock, which is, yeah.
Yeah, and it's kind of weird. It turns them from being jealous of humanity to them being kind of like tragic figures where they wanted to help, they got punished for helping, and then after they helped, man decided to use all the knowledge they got from them to hunt them down and kill them. Yeah,
which is that sounds very human like. Yeah, the God part there is a little interesting because it's almost more like kind of they were trying to mix in a little bit of like Greek mythology kind of into it a little bit more to make it a little along those lines, we brought man fire, and then man just uses fire to burn us, it's like type thing versus which again in the Bible doesn't specify too much on what exactly how it was like or whatever, but so you got a lot of freedom, I guess, to go whichever direction you want with that.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny too. It's just like, the Book of Enoch is from like the 1st century BC, I want to say. So it's like people have been speculating on this for a long time.
Yeah. So there's lots of stuff out there in the world, to conversate about. Yeah, it's one of those things I said. It definitely has come up a lot more, so I'm going to have to definitely dive into Enoch a little bit. At least spend a little bit of time understanding more of it.
Yeah. So I guess if we've got nothing more on that, go from one Old Testament topic to another. I guess we'll talk about what's happening with Israel.
All sorts of things. No, I was like, it seems like, the Middle East is on fire, basically, in many ways. They're pushing into different directions, and then the whole Syria thing, and that's kind of crazy. The other interesting was being a, good old American, I didn't know as much of geography of that area as I should know. And so looking into it, and the importance of the different locations of Syria, Iran, and all that stuff is like, Syria's kind of the way, like, especially in Old Testament wise, where you would have to cross through Syria pretty much to get down to on your way to Egypt. Because again, in the Old Testament, nobody cared about Israel per se, that area. It was mainly just a go between Syria to go up into Iraq and, Babylon and all that. Because you couldn't go through the desert directly to Egypt, so everybody pretty much had to go down the coast there, which is one of the interesting things, learning more of the geography of Israel and stuff like that. Because a lot of people, obviously, water was scarcer, so most people would just fall right along the coast, which then most of Israel is actually on the other side of the mountain range. So you'd have to kind of go around the mountain to fight Israel for the most part, or Israel would have to go around the mountain to fight you if you were traveling up and down to Egypt, because it's kind of just a place in the middle for a lot of history there.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting too how that area has been so hotly contested over the years, and it's like, I hate to say it, but it all seems like it comes down to good old-fashioned racism more than anything else, because like you said, there's not much in terms of the land itself that offers much value.
Yeah, and that's one of the things too, when Israel first set up there, it was all swamps and all that stuff, and they made something out of the land. That's kind of their whole thing. I'm trying to remember. I want to say the book. Did you ever read the book of how Israel got started? I want to say it was called the Exodus. It was called Exodus also, but it was about right after World War II. And all
I read the book about how Israel got started.
Well, other than the Bible. Yeah. The more recent one.
Yeah, no, I haven't.
It's been so long since I read it. I probably need to read it again, but it was actually a pretty good book. It obviously glorifies Israel and their taking of the land and all that stuff after World War II, finding their own place. And obviously they were all very zealot at that time.
Yeah.
And how, again, it's a PR thing, but it's that the people who currently were living there, didn't really care for the land or whatever, so they were buying it either cheap on the dollar and all that stuff. But it's definitely something recently that's kind of come up in conversations, things I've just kind of thought about, because I think it was when they were for the Trump administration, they were bringing in I can't remember who, it might have been the emissary to the Middle East, something like that. And one of the questions they asked him was, do you believe, what lands do you believe Israel can possess or should possess? Do you believe like biblical times where it's the whole covenant where it's from the north to the south, down to Egypt or like that? And I was like, so that's something that kind of brought up for me, was kind of the idea. Like, if I was asked that question, like, what areas do I feel that Israel was made to possess or designed to possess? And if you go biblically wise, it tells you very distinct. Here's the borders, and then is that still something that we enforce or whatever? Because now they're pushing it up into Syria, which again, you understand to a point, but then are they going to give some of Syria back? Are they going to keep all that? Which again, then.
So you'll have to enlighten me. I've heard vague things about it. So Israel is actually pushing into Syria.
Well, yeah, when Syria collapsed, they pushed up into up to the mountain Hebron, right? I think it was Hebron, which I've been trying to keep a balanced perspective of it, because I definitely tend to lean more pro-Israeli, and so I've been listening to a little bit more things on the opposite side of it, and they're like, oh, Netanyahu just wants a ski resort, so he's never going to give that back. So kind of because there's kind of this like no man's land, which they had between the two countries, obviously for like a buffer zone, so that way, nobody accidentally shoots each other or whatever, or it's a very obvious sign that somebody's attacking the other. And so when Syria fell, Israel pushed into that buffer zone basically, which is always up to Hebron, and they held that, and then they also blew up a whole bunch of military stuff and all that. And so now they're pushing a little bit further even into there. And so the debate, of course, is like, well, are they going to just annex that area, or are they going to do it? And the current Syrian government obviously is busy just trying to keep the country together.
Yeah.
So they don't really have time to mess with that. And so the other aspect of it is you got the Kurds in there, and Turkey on the other side too is trying to wiggle stuff in there and get their foothold in. So it's just an interesting area where I said the whole Middle East is kind of a mess. I mean, we usually know a lot more about Gaza and all that type of thing, and Lebanon's pretty much quieted down for the most part, and everybody's got the Houthi rebels, but those Houthi rebels aren't really in that area per se. They're across the water a little bit, but they still are effective and causing trouble to Israel. But yeah, it's just been something that personally I've been processing is like, because the other thing is like with the whole Russia-Ukraine as well, it's like I think borders probably are going to be changing quite a bit on the maps, and so people are taking advantage, some quasi taking advantage of that. And also I think it's just a time of transition in the world anyway. It's just because, things are rough, and when things get rough, things move around quite a bit. And so again, does that encourage others to expand into their areas? And again, the thing is like, is Israel wrong in moving into those areas? Because that's the whole thing with what parts do we recognize as their natural border?
Yeah.
I think most Christians tend to lean a little more towards Bible. What the Bible says is it's all theirs,
Yeah. And that's the thing too, is like, I think there's some nuance to that, because it's like, not that I'm necessarily anti-Israel.
No.
But, the nation of Israel rejected the Messiah very clearly. They very clearly rejected the Messiah.
Yeah.
And, like, what do I know? I'm just some asshole on the internet. But, like, my thought is that the siege of Jerusalem, the Roman siege of Jerusalem, and the destruction of the temple in 70 AD, I definitely lean towards that as an act of judgment that signified that the old covenant had ceased.
Okay.
So the idea that the land of Israel is like the inheritance of modern Jews is a little suspect to me.
Fair.
Not because I think that God's promises to Israel have entirely ceased, as there are some who believe that, but I don't necessarily believe that. But I also believe that God's yet to be promises for the nation of Israel are based on his mercy and goodness, and are going to come about in a time frame where he's restoring Israel to himself.
Yeah.
Because currently they've rejected him.
Yeah.
So I don't think that right now, at this very moment, I don't think that the land of Israel is their heritage from a covenant perspective.
Fair. Agreed. It's just, something that kind of was interesting, pondering, because again, it's like, I don't know. It's like one of those things I'm still, like I said, still processing, still kind of like out there. Because again, you and I have talked many times before that sometimes people forget that the nation of Israel and then is not exactly the same Israel as what we talk about in the Bible. That. It's like, and the nation is not the same again as the people who actually practice the religion, and as well as Christians. And again, we're all grafted in now, but it's like there has to be some separation, kind of again between Israel is just simply Israel, and then
and not to
nation,
not to say that I think their land should be taken away from them by any stretch of the imagination, but I reject the claims of Zionism that that say that this land is our birthright.
Yeah,
kind of a thing. It's like, I don't see it that way.
Fair. I kind of lean a little bit more towards that too, because again, it's definitely an internal struggle that I have been going through and been processing, and I still haven't worked it all out. Is because it's like I do recognize that at a time, anyways, God had promised them all this land, and again, what does that look like now? Because again, we also in the Bible, many times Israel goes through those cycles of being exiled and then coming back and being exiled and coming back, and that was one of the big things actually with the World War II. The Exodus book was, it's just another one of those cycles. They've been out in Babylon and now they're, coming back to their own place.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes, though, Christians, we tend to celebrate that because we want the second coming to come. And so we're like, this is a sign. So, everybody's always looking at Israel like, what's happening in Israel? Because, it talks about it. It's like, and I mean, there's been many times where Israel's gone up and down, it goes on the roller coaster and around the wilderness. And I don't think it's necessarily always as obvious as I think a lot of people hope for with that.
Yeah, and that's the thing too, is in the Bible you see cycles of Israel being taken over and then they come back to the land, but usually those cycles are accompanied by them returning to the Lord.
Yeah, true. Since we had a pause, I had a moment to look up a couple of the references things. So there's a book called The Exodus that came out actually in 1958. It's a historical novel by the American novelist Leon Uris, which is about the founding of the state of Israel, beginning with the compressed retelling of the voyages of the 1947 immigration ship. And again, it's definitely much more of like we had kind of been talking about previously, was how they didn't start the nation of Israel out of a judge, coming back and bringing them back under God. Mm-hmm. It was actually, they started out of, we need a place to live, and this is, our forefathers' place, so we're coming to this place, and they buy it, take it by force, all the different parts that they do to take it over, which again, because at that moment, the understanding is it was land that not many people wanted.
Yeah. And so, in that too, it's like, I think, like, in just like a term, like a purely, like, just like geopolitical sense.
Yeah.
I think Israel's claim to that land isn't entirely without merit.
Totally.
Like, that region has always been hotly contested, and
thanks to Abraham.
different groups, different empires have always moved in there, taken over, and then been ousted by other forces, And so in that sense, Israel occupying those lands through a mixture of treaty and through war and other things is no different than what anybody else is doing.
Totally. And that's the thing, too, is because even when Abraham, got it, there were already people living there when God had promised it to Abraham. And Abraham also then knew that he wasn't getting the land himself, but his descendants would get it. And so it's kind of, that whole interesting thing about it, again, how literally you take the Bible again, does that still apply then to modern times, or does that law, that only apply to, again, the time when Moses and them came back from the wilderness and took over the area, which gets complicated. Because again, the other part is like, where in the world has the original people who owned it still own it? It's like, it's like, and that's kind of one of the weird things.
Antarctica still belongs to
the penguins.
That's the one thing too, is like, you gotta, like, I'm not gonna necessarily say that Israel needs to be run out of there. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, it's like, I reject the claims of Zionism that land is their birthright. So
Fair.
It means that if they do something like what they're doing now, they can't use that as a shield from criticism, Oh,
totally. And that's where I think, like kind of we had touched on earlier, was that it's important, again, to realize that the nation of Israel isn't necessarily, again, the nation of Israel that we read about in the Bible. It's like, it's not per se the same. I mean, obviously it's the same area, same genealogy, all that type of thing, but it's
a lot of history has happened between then and now.
Yeah. It's not the same exact. And again, there's still God's chosen people. I still believe, obviously, that they have, blessings that are specific to them as well as all that. So just for everybody else's knowledge, my parents went down the Messianic Jewish route. So I have a bit of history with Judaism and kind of along those lines. And I always found it interesting anyways, again, just being a Christian, learning about the Bible and all that stuff as well. And so I'm very sympathetic to the Jewish culture. But again, I also, recognize that the nation isn't always, they still have modern desires, modern things like that, like all people do for every country or whatever,
Yeah. And, it's one of those things where I think it's an issue that people just kind of need to, in general, calm down about.
Totally.
Because I guess we can kind of start to get into the woke right stuff a little bit.
Yeah, it's okay.
It's
We're already there. No?
It's a very polarizing issue kind of a thing. It's like you have people who are pointing out legitimate criticisms of Israel, and then you have a sort of not always Jewish, but also evangelical sort of backlash to that.
Totally.
That, this idea that's pretty strong in evangelicalism that the modern day state of Israel, is somehow entitled to the land because of the Mosaic covenant, which I think is an erroneous belief, but a lot of Christians...
No, totally, yeah.
A lot of
the
Christians
Bible says
hold to that
so,
idea.
Yeah, it's it never said this is no longer your land, so yeah.
So you have this very strong backlash rooted in deeply held beliefs, both in Jews and in Christians, against just criticisms of the modern state of Israel.
Yeah.
And then what ends up happening is those people end up sort of being driven out of what is the sort of acceptable sphere of political discussion.
Totally.
Also called the Overton window.
Yeah.
And then so those people end up sort of taking on more radical positions on Israel. And then, which, leads to backlash again from the Zionist and evangelical side that says, oh, anti-Semitism, and then which leads to a hardening of the other side against those sort of criticisms, which leads them into more extreme beliefs. It's just a self-perpetuating cycle, and then before you know it, there's no middle ground on the issue anymore. You're either a Nazi or you're a Jew lover.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing, yeah. It's one of those things that automatically we polarize it, no matter, there's no middle ground at all. There's no, well, this part Israel did well, this part they didn't do well. And again, it's it just gets complicated, like everything in life. But yeah, and so I think all sides, just need to kind of step a little bit back, see what the middle ground is a little bit there. Because the other aspect of it too is, I know people talk all the time about, bringing in Gaza a little bit, but it's that, well, the only reason they had to resort to violence is because it's the only way people will listen and tell stuff like that. It's but you do violence against anybody. It's like us, with Afghanistan. You brought Afghanistan, not Afghanistan personally, but, Bin Laden brought attack on the U.S., and so we went and leveled a country that was already rubble, basically. Yeah. But it's the little, whereas Gaza was already an established city, so then they leveled it. But it's what country wouldn't do that if someone got attacked you? It's now again, was it probably a little excessive? Yes, but again, it's which country wouldn't though do that? And so in that regard, it's finding that balance again of it, recognizing, okay, you may went a little too far, and countries usually do when somebody attacks your country because you got to make a point. It's and then finding that balance in between. And again, that area's always been a struggle again since Abraham. Thanks to Abraham, having not waiting on God's promise.
Thanks, Abraham.
It's because the problem was all of his descendants had that blessing. So all of his descendants are going to be fruitful and multiply and all that stuff. So obviously, there was little different ones for Isaac, but all of his descendants got this very close to similar blessing, all the covenants that were up to that point.
Yeah.
And so, and I think it's kind of one of those things that I said, as sad as it is, kind of getting to know everybody always looks to there for kind of the second coming of Christ and all that and relying on that. It's like, I think realistically, though, it's just going to be one of those areas that's going to be hectic till Christ comes back because of Abraham, which again is the whole, I know I'm harping on him a lot, but it's like, that's kind of like a human condition, though. It's kind of interesting and how, something that we do in our current time, like, oh, this won't affect anybody or future generations, it's something I want to enjoy or whatever. But it could cause great problems further down the line. It's how we don't always think that far down the line because we're always, in the moment of being selfish and like focusing on what we want. So
yeah,
there's the Bible lesson in there.
Yeah, definitely do things God's way. Don't try to hijack his plan for yourself. Bad things are gonna happen. Yeah, that's one of those things where it's like I am not automatically supportive of everything Israel does, but at the same time too, when people like, oh, it's so horrible that they're committing genocide against the Palestinians. If the roles were reversed, the Palestinians would wipe Jews off the map. Like, true. Jews and Arabs hate each other with a passion.
Yeah.
And as much as we as Americans want, to sort of bully our way into other countries' disputes, I think that at this point, the best thing we can do is just leave them to their own devices and focus on ourselves, It's like we as Westerners are not going to come in to that culture, which is a product of, thousands of years of just animosity.
Yeah.
And we're, wave the white flag and it's going to be all over with kind of a thing. It's like the whole give peace a chance sort of thing approach, just John Lennon imagine sort of that mentality doesn't work.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that we, as I say, Americans, we definitely have kind of a, we just want everyone to get along. We still have kind of that, like I said, that peace thing. Why can't we all just live, split it, all that stuff? And I'll push back a little bit on the part that, like, the thing is that Israel does rely on us for a lot of their weaponry and stuff like that, which again, theoretically is just so that they could do more precision airstrikes versus just carpet bombing the whole place. But again, it's already rubble anyways. But it's like, and so we do have some pull with them in that regard, that we have ways of influencing Israel that can force them to do a little bit more what we want.
Yeah, and we have some sense of leverage.
Totally.
But the problem is that they have leverage over us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a mutual thing. They have great technologies and
they're and not even just technology. It's like they've spent a lot of years sort of building up an American pro-Israel lobby.
Oh, totally. Yes.
Like there's tons 100%. Of politicians that have dual Israeli-U.S. citizenship.
Yep.
And think of themselves as loyal to, and think of them, they won't say it outright, but you can kind of tell through their actions that they're a little more loyal to Israel than they are to the U.S.
Yeah, and that's always can kind of be a problem because it always makes me think back actually to when I was a kid and my dad was in the reserves and they had talked about it was another time when Israel was in chaos and we were looking at potentially sending U.S. troops there. And my dad, I remember him and my mom having the conversation around the table. It was like, if Dad got sent to Israel, would he fight against Israel, or would he, defect to join them or desert, and go to Israel? And Mom's like, you better not, and leave me here all alone, type thing. It's like because my dad, he trained us, to follow the Bible a lot, and he's like, and he knows from reading the Bible that, he leaned a little bit more into the anyone who raises a hand against Israel, basically you're gonna fail type things, like, because you're going against God's anointed. So they apply a little bit of David and Saul type thing in there, which again, definitely back in that time, I want to say it's 90s, probably early 90s ish. There was again a lot more of that leaning into, again, that Israel is right, no matter what, and that's kind of part of the part where I feel it started, or not probably started, because it started back in the 80s or even earlier than that, like we were talking about in the book. But and so so that it's definitely ingrained in there. Like you said, over the years, Israel, the nation of Israel, has definitely encouraged and fostered a better relationship even in that. Because even like when Biden took over, I remember that was one of the things that Netanyahu always kept saying was, oh yeah, we're your brother, we're friends, it was like, we're like family. It's like, and really pulled that card a lot, even when Biden was doing stuff that wasn't to Israel's benefit or whatever. But yeah. So it's very easy for us, especially anybody who has Christian beliefs, to fall into that where we almost idolize Israel to a point, again, which I think that's something that is important, again, not to idolize them to the point where, again, we put them above God, because again, they are God's chosen people, and I do believe they have blessings, and like I talked about earlier, but you can't put them above God, and God many times brought destruction on Israel because they weren't following him. And from what I've seen, I haven't seen Israel, out there worshiping, praising God's name. So it's like they're still, I feel, in rebellion, even though they've started their own country and all that stuff. So again.
Yeah, and that's the thing too, is like now I'm not going to, like, there's stark differences between Christianity and Judaism.
Yep.
Like, some people try to say that Jews are like our elder brothers in the faith.
Yeah.
And it's like the modern Orthodox Jews have a completely different mindset about the nature and character of God, how to interpret scripture, all of that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not even just Jesus or no Jesus.
Yeah.
There's a whole host of differences. So I'm hesitant to call modern Orthodox Jews our elder brothers in the faith or anything like that. But even if I were to grant Jews the sort of notion that they're followers of God in some sense too, even if I were to grant them that, like, there's a difference between Jews and I say Jews as in followers of the religion of Judaism. There's a difference between practitioners of Judaism and the modern day state of Israel.
Yeah.
The modern day state of Israel, the government, is a secular organization.
Yes.
Peopled by secularists.
Yeah,
like
totally.
many modern day Jews in positions of power all over the world are atheists or agnostic, or they're just secular humanists in some sense.
Totally.
So it's like, you can't necessarily like say that, oh, Israel is, they're, the government of Israel and the modern day state of Israel, that's God's blessing is on them, because like the modern day state of Israel is a completely secular enterprise.
Yeah, and that's one thing I think you and I agree on. Yeah, is that God isn't going to bless them if they're not following him. So it's like, that's one of the things. So they're doing it out of their own strength versus doing it out of the strength God has given them, because I haven't seen any obvious signs of them turning back to God, even if they were going more Jew versus, Messianic, version. It's like, and again, I feel like to get our support, they're like, oh yeah, we're friendly, type thing. It's like, but if you go into actually the religious belief part of it, they definitely don't like Jesus as the Messiah. It's
yeah. And that's really the kicker too, is like, God sent Jesus as the fulfillment of the entire Old Testament.
Yeah.
All the law and the prophets and the writings were all pointing to him. He was the he was the big deal. Like, there is no bigger deal in terms of God's relationship with mankind than Jesus. And guess what? The Jews rejected him, and they still reject him. That's not a small thing.
Yeah, because that's the thing that always talks about too. Even like when they were in exile or whatever, it's like when their hearts turn back to God, that's when then God, would send a judge or whatever to bring them back into a nation like that. And I feel in many ways, out of kind of necessity, they ended up forcing it because like we need some place where we can have our own place, which is understandable. Everybody wants a home. Everybody wants a place to call your own. But they didn't do it under the guys. They didn't do it under. I feel. Lord's blessing, other than just tradition. This is traditionally where we've been, so they followed it much more out of their own strength, which is one of the big things. In the book of the Exodus, not the Bible one, but the other one from 1950 that talks about. I mean, it obviously dramatizes it and all that stuff, but that they were pretty much out of necessity. They didn't want to end up in a situation again like World War II, where they had nowhere to go, where everybody didn't want to deal with them, so they sent them back to Germany, which then they ended up going back into concentration camps or whatever. And so, which is understandable. Like I said, everybody wants a home.
Yeah, it's and at this point, like, I feel like Israel has just as much claim to the land in a geopolitical sense as anyone else does, because it's like that land, like a lot of the Palestinian Arabs will be like, that land is our birthright. Actually, it's like, no, I don't think it's your birthright either. Like, you guys moved in there after the Romans got driven out, and the Romans drove the previous rulers of that land out, and so on and
Alexander
so forth.
Great before that, and
yeah.
So everybody dominated, at some point. And that's the thing, especially on the main continents over there. It's like all those areas have been taken over so many times and shifted and changed. Yeah, basic, and it comes down to, honestly, I feel a lot more that wherever you're kind of born, that kind of becomes your home, even if you're in exile or whatever like that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in Old Testament talks about a lot about everybody, the Jews still longing for Babylon. A lot of them had never been to, or longing for Israel from when they were in Babylon. It's like, but a lot of them hadn't even actually ever been to the Promised Land. So it's like, when you're born in another area, how much of that is what you know versus more like home than a place that your ancestors have amped up for you.
Like, yeah, and it's like, it's funny too that we think of Israel as like the Middle East. Israel's in the Middle East, and so we think of Jews as Middle Easterners. But it's like the original settlers of the modern day nation of Israel had an mostly Eastern European background.
Totally, yeah.
So it's like, and it doesn't go that far back too. It's like Netanyahu, like his name is Benjamin Netanyahu now, but it's like it's like either his father or his grandfather, I can't remember. You go back just one or two generations, and it was changed. Like, that person changed their family name, their surname, intentionally to make it sound more Hebrew, before they had a Eastern European sounding family name.
Yeah, because the end of World War II was only 1940s. So it's like that wasn't that long ago, only a couple generations realistically. And that's one of the things too, actually, in the book that I talked about was that they talk about that where they all changed their names to be a little bit more Jewish or whatever. They embrace their Jewish name versus, because again, during World War II, a lot of Jews changed their names then also to non-Jewish names, so that way it wouldn't be as recognizable as well as that. But I digress. I feel like we've hit a lot on this one, so I was like,
yeah. But yeah, it's just so interesting how like this topic's so divisive, and it's kind of like boiling over into other things too.
Totally, yeah. It goes into everything.
Because it's like now you have all this like, because before there was kind of like a sort of, the left kind of like had a sort of hold on the culture as far as how we viewed race relations and all that and politics. And now that's starting to break off and people are people are kind of waking up to the fact that this narrative that we've had about how like being a racist is the worst thing you could possibly be and like it's sort of like now we're like, oh, I see, racist was always a word that was just used as a form of control.
Yeah.
And people are like, okay, we're done with this now. Like the whole situation with the one chick who called the little black boy the N-word.
Yeah.
And then she like raised like 500,000 on her GoFundMe. But the reason why she was able to raise that so much money, it was not because of that specifically, it was because of the sort of narrative was previous narrative that we had about race relations was kind of crumbling away, and people are like, I don't care that she like normally we would condemn that sort of thing, right? But now people are just like so fed up with the what they've been told about race relations that now they're just like, I don't care anymore.
Yeah, that's probably like racism has been used so much that now it doesn't have any meaning anymore because they're just like, yeah, it's another racist, yeah. It's like, and so nobody actually believes anybody is a racist, even if you really were like a racist, because the word's been so overused. And I feel like we were talking about the woke right is kind of getting to a similar spot now with anti-Semite, where like everything you say, we've already hit on it quite a bit, but anything you say against Israel at all or any Jewish person is anti-Semitic. So therefore, you're a hater. And it's like, and so I feel that word's getting also overused so much that now it's getting to the same point where and now we got a Nazi, Nazi Jew lover haters. It's like,
it's like it just gets to the point where people lean into that sort of thing because it's like they're like, might as well wear this label with pride.
Yeah.
If I'm going to be called an anti-Semite or a racist or whatever, I might as well just be loud and proud about it.
Yeah, because you're gonna get to the point where you're just fed up with it. So you're just like, fine, yes, I am, and darn tootin', It's like, again, it's not that you are. It's just that simply it's easier to accept it than to say it, so you can move on with the conversation. Versus that becomes the whole conversation, as whether you are or not. And it's one of those things like too, like, and if you say I'm not anti-Semitic, I know lots of Jewish people. I have lots of Jewish friends. That just makes you sound even worse than if you actually were. It's like there's no winning answer to it. It's like.
It's one of those things that, again, it's like nobody is, people just need to calm down about this. Because, like, I don't share the sort of extreme views that the so-called woke right has about Israel or about race or about whatever.
Yeah.
But at the core of what they're kind of saying, there are some things that need to be taken notice of.
Totally.
Except nobody's willing to actually have that conversation. It seems like either you're being driven further into extremism, or you're the one branding these people as extremists.
Yeah.
It's like,
much more nuanced than that, yeah.
Yeah, it's like there's things we can talk about without necessarily like, turning this into a war,
Yeah. Yeah, it's one of those things, get onto another hot topic, but it's like, I never entirely understood with like the whole abortion thing. Because I feel like with abortion, I know everybody, it's kind of similar to the same thought. It's like, there's a certain spot where everybody agrees it's a baby. It's like, and so why can't we all at least move to that spot where we all agree at this point it's a baby? It's like, and then from there work inching it back to at conception, It's like, but we have this whole thing is like it's all or nothing. You can't take that. It's only like the last trimester or whatever. It's like we want it recognized all the way to the beginning. It's like you can't always jump right to that. You have to work your way up to it. And again, I say I'm a believer in science. I get to a point that's like I believe that our understanding of science as it is flawed. I mean, but with things we do know things about science that we've learned, which again I think God gives us the ability to figure out science and all that stuff, which I think is a blessing. And again, it's our understanding of it. But when our understanding of science conflicts with the Bible, I will always rely on the Bible because the problem with science is I just think we don't know that next layer of it to be able to explain it. Which again, I believe that baby is born at conception or formed at conception and all that. But it's like I don't see why we don't just kind of at least get halfway to the point, of being able to do that with everybody. Because I think most reasonable people are all going to agree that halfway, roughly through pregnancy, you can be safe to say most people are going to say, yeah, it's a baby. It's like,
yeah. And it's like, it's kind of funny too. It's like in the United States is pretty much where this is like a hot button issue.
Totally, yeah.
And it's so funny to me because, like, you look at other Western nations and their abortion laws, like now Roe v. Wade has been overturned. So, like, that, there's complications now. But before Roe v. Wade was considered settled law, so abortion was a guaranteed right nationally underneath that framework. And so you looked at what in general was allowed as far as abortion laws versus abortion laws in other Western nations. And other Western nations actually had stricter abortion laws than a lot of U.S. states did and still do for some of the more diehard holdouts like New York and California that doubled down even after Roe v. Wade was overturned.
Yeah.
And it's like Europe is like way, way more to the left than we are at overall. Like everything is way, way, way over to the left. Like they're like what they call their centrist parties are what we would like consider like far left parties.
Yeah.
And what they consider their far right parties are like what we would consider like Republicans, you know, like who consider like normal Republicans. It's like who considers normal Republicans like far right.
Yeah.
Like only people on the far left do. And so it's like seeing how far left to the left they are, and yet they still have more restrictive abortion laws than a lot of U.S. states do.
Yeah. A lot more tradition too. So like they've been around a lot longer. So yeah, you got all those extra rules built up and all that stuff. Yeah, it gets complicated. Yeah, it's weird trying to compare far right, far left in different countries because like I said, the middle, the median isn't the same.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was
But it's like, it's like we would actually be like if everybody in the U.S. moved over to what's kind of like the European standard,
they lose their mind.
Abortion standards, it's like we would be a lot more pro-life as a country, which is insane considering that, like the beating heart of the pro-life movement is American.
Yeah.
And yet, if we were to move nationally to European standards, we would be more pro-life than we are now, so that just tells you how far we've gotten over to the pro-abortion side, that simply trying to ban it outright from there isn't going to do any good.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to consent to that. Like even in really, really red conservative states.
Yep.
When after Roe v. Wade got overturned and all these lawmakers in all these state legislatures started pushing harsh anti-abortion bills through, like a lot of them actually failed. A lot of them actually got voted down in deeply red conservative areas.
Yeah.
So it's like we're not. There's a lot of work to be done before we can ever enact like true anti-abortion laws in this country.
Yeah. I think there's always going to be that stipulation, that if mother's life is in danger, that's just one of those hard decisions you got to make. And I don't think any rational person would deny that. That's a thing that I think is up to the couple, to decide, And that's a decision we've had to make for a long time, even before, it's like,
yeah,
it's like one of those, it's not a good decision either way. And it's just, but now we've hit on all the good topics of the evening. All the fiery ones.
Yeah. I guess we can move on to some less divisive topics. I don't know if you got any more about your 3D printing saga that you want to go through.
Yeah, I can get through the 3D printing saga a little bit. I've been learning a lot with it. Like I said, last time I was still fairly new into it. So I've done enough of it now that I understand it to a solid point, to the point that it's like Bamboo Labs. Here's a slot fill. But I was like, they came out with a brand new printer that has like dual heads that you can print with, and it looks like it's fairly good. It just came out. It has a laser setting too. I don't think the combination of a laser printer or a laser etcher and a 3D printer is going to work out as well as the plan is. From the reviews I saw, the problem is that with laser printing is usually things that smelling like burnt plastic or burnt whatever, burnt wood. So you get like a burn smell in it, so then all your 3D prints would come out with a burn smell. But the difference again too is like Bamboo Labs, it's a Chinese one, but it's very simple. It's more like iPhone, so you plug and play kind of, and it just works. Mm-hmm. Whereas like if you want to go like an Ender 3 or any of that type of thing, you have a lot more of, as they call it, the 3D experience, where you have to tweak the printer, you got to mess with all this stuff, which again is good. I think it's good to go through, but going through that, like my current 3D printer I have is a King Room, and it doesn't have auto bed leveling, which is definitely something. If you're getting a 3D printer, try to get auto bed leveling, because it's a pain in the neck to level it every time. It's doable, but it's again a good learning thing.
But so you got to like manually go in with like an actual level and try to.
What you do is you kind of get level like that, but then you use a piece of paper, and so the whole thing is about getting the nozzle exactly, basically pretty much a piece of paper thick from the bed.
Oh, okay.
And so it has 5 checkpoints, each corner and then in the middle. And so what you do is you do position 1, and it moves it over there. It goes down, touches the bed, and then comes up to wherever setting it's supposed to be at. And then you adjust the bed, and you slide the paper underneath. It should have like just just a little bit of friction, and you have to kind of learn to get a feel for it. And so you do that at all 4 points, and then you do it in the middle. And in a perfect world, in the middle then will feel the exact same as all the other 4 points. It doesn't always work out like that. Usually I try to get the 4 points, and then if you get the 4 points, the 5th point in the middle usually is going to work out. Works out well enough. But it's very tedious doing that every time. So typically what I would do was I would have 3 or 4 prints I want to do already set up. So once I level it, I can just do those kind of back to back. And I don't have to take the time to rearrange it. Because if you leave it alone, especially I was doing construction in my house, so the 3D printer was moved around quite a bit. So it wasn't always staying in one spot where it would stay level. And so with an auto leveler, you just push start, and it automatically goes around, touches the bed with a little probe it has, and it calculates for the unevenness of the bed and prints accordingly. Which is what like Bamboo thing does. It if you go with a Bamboo Lab one, it has auto leveling, has all that stuff, so it doesn't clog up as much. The other problem though with like having like an iPhone or any of that type of thing is it's proprietary, so you have to have like special spools for it. So if you buy spools from something else, you got to roll them on to the Bamboo Lab spools. Which the cool thing with Bamboo Lab though is they actually read. They have like a little QR code on them that they can read, and it'll automatically enter into the computer what type of filament you're putting in there.
Oh.
So that's a huge help. Otherwise, you got to kind of know what the settings are, which usually on a spool of filament, it tells you what the ideal temperature is, and what for the melting of it at the nozzle, as well as what the bed temp should be. And each ones are different. Like if you do The one I've had most problems with is if I do like glow in the dark. Glow in the dark filament for some reason is just very finicky. It's like, I don't know if it's also that maybe I just got really cheap glow in the dark filament or not, because that seems to be something too in my research is like most things, if you invest in the better quality filament, you have less likelihood of jams and messing up and stuff like that. Because but again, it's one of those things like I'd start out, if you were starting out with 3D printing, probably start out with something fairly cheap just to kind of get a feel for it, to figure it out. And then figure out what you want from a 3D printer, which again, I recommend bed leveling. Bed leveling is a huge one. It's like everything else is kind of then just for your preference for the most part. But so I enjoyed the journey I've been on as far as the struggle for it and all that. But again, I'm kind of to the point now though where I'd rather just have join the empire, have a simple printer that just prints whatever I put into it, so I can spend more time focusing actually on making models. And printing it that way. Because like up to this point, I've created 4, I want to say, models. Otherwise, I usually just find ones online and then I download them. And so I want to get a lot more into making my own models and doing that. So that's something I've been working on, and I'm currently working on getting into Blender again, because I like to use Blender just because I have some experience with it. And it's very a lot of front learning you got to do on it for 3D rendering and all that stuff, but there's no limit to what you can create. If I use pretty much any kind of CAD program, again, it's just as long as you can save it to an STL file.
Yeah, I actually looked into Blender a little bit because I was playing around with some ideas for things we could do with videos.
Yeah.
And in terms of like animation and stuff.
Totally, yeah.
And I was kind of like blown away by like how much you can do in Blender, and it's still like it's like a open source software.
Yeah, that's why I love it as far as the open source of it. And there's so many videos on it. The thing is, like, there's so many buttons and settings, and then they do an update, and you got to relearn where those are. I haven't got to the point where my mouse pad now is like a Blender cheat sheet, kind of like you could get those Excel ones or whatever. So I got that. So it's just because, like, if you don't use it all the time, you forget all the things. It's like if you had taken an Excel class, before, it's like, I don't remember which formula to type in to get it to do whatever, but Blender's similar to that. But yeah, there's a lot of buttons, a lot of learning to it, but it's one of those things that I think in the long run will pay off. So
yeah, that's crazy too. Like how many different things you can use it for, and when it doesn't even seem like it was really designed with that in mind. Because from what I can tell, it's for like 3D graphics primarily.
Yeah, that's why I originally learned it for, was because I wanted to get into kind of video game design. I wanted to, originally design my own video game type thing, like everybody does. But then you realize that you need a whole team to do it, because one person doing all the different parts, there's a lot of different parts to learn.
Yeah, but I was actually I was looking into it for 2D animation purposes.
Okay.
So it's like,
that's way easier, but yeah, still, it's like.
So it's like, there's this whole, it has actually pretty robust 2D animation capabilities, and it's just so crazy that like you could do all that in a program that wasn't really designed to do that with.
Yeah, one of the coolest features, which I had learned previously when I was again trying to do video game animation and all that, was you can actually scan in like images and then put them up there, so you can use it kind of like a model and then build the 3D model to whatever image you had. So I'm actually gonna have because my dream game, which was it the virtual reality thing, I can't think of the name of it right now. They came out with it, but it was a game I thought of called Bar Fight, whatever. And the idea was you go to different bars, and they're different Irish guy, you got whatever, and like that. And so that was kind of my original idea for it, but the meta thing already kind of created a similar version. But I'm gonna have my daughter draw up a character. I'm gonna have probably one of the youth group girls draw up a character too, and like just make them into 3D models, just because I want to still do like a little bit of that game, at least just make like a quick one, maybe just a couple characters.
Yeah.
But that was my original game idea back in the day, which Meta stole from me, and from my mind, they took it out of my mind.
Yeah, my game design aspirations ended back in high school when I was programming TI-83 calculators
Yeah.
and realized that trying to program them to do any kind of like game thing was like way harder than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, it's way more complicated. Like I said, there's a lot more layers to it. That's why you pretty much need a team usually, unless you're some whiz with super technology and all the different, because there's different aspects of it. The audio stuff, like that's the whole learning thing. The animation's the whole learning thing. Everything is a learning thing. It's like it's not necessarily intuitive per se. So that's why you get like a team together usually. That makes it a little easier.
Yeah, it's crazy too. The amount of dedication that people who do that are able to put into stuff, because it's like I got turned off of it after, just after I learned how hard coding was.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't know if I want to spend my time learning this.
Totally.
Kind of a thing, which in hindsight, I was like, maybe I should have. But,
I was going to learn to do it anyway. So I'm like,
whatever. But it's like the amount of, for people who actually do that stuff, the amount of dedication they're putting into it is crazy. Because I've been following the progress of I don't know if you've heard of it. It's called Sky Oblivion. So it's like a...
is that the game?
So you've heard of the Elder Scrolls, right?
Yep.
So they just came out with the Elder Scrolls 4 remastered.
Okay.
Right? So that's Oblivion.
And that's why there's been all those memes for Oblivion. I was wondering because I knew the original Oblivion or whatever. And
yeah, they just came out with a remastered version.
Okay.
And it's in like... It's done in Unreal Engine 5, so it looks like
sharp,
way more detailed than the original.
Yeah, the original was pretty basic.
The original looked bad.
My dad still loved that game though. That was one of my dad's like favorite games for a long time.
But there was a project that's been going on for years now, and I guess they're going to release it this year. There's a team of people who are trying to recreate the Oblivion in the Skyrim engine.
Interesting. So it's gonna be like a mod,
it's gonna be like a Skyrim mod, but it's gonna be like the whole world of Oblivion and all the quests and all the characters.
I mean, it's doable. Everybody's done it with a lot of other things
but they're like, and of course they're putting their own spin on it.
Okay.
So it's not gonna be exactly the same thing. But just I've been kind of following the progress of it because it's kind of intriguing, the stuff they're doing with it, and just the amount of work that they're putting into this thing that they're going to make zero money off of.
Yeah.
Like boggles my mind.
Yeah, that's the crazy thing with those mods, like for Fallout 4 or Skyrim in particular is one of those huge ones that people mod the heck out of. And like you said, they spend hours and hours and hours and hours, hundreds of hours, if not thousands of hours. They put in, like I said, for something that you don't make any money. It's just simply for the fan of it. It's like, which is cool. That's one of the cool things with technology. That people can come together and unite. To make something, pretty much useless in the real world. But it's something fun. That people love, and you have this passion for it, and it removes all the other stuff we've talked about throughout the night. That's like. And just down to one simple thing to make the mod run.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's kind of the thing too. It's like, sometimes we need those useless things.
No, totally.
Because it's like the stuff we've been talking about for most of this episode is, some awful, dreary things. And it's like the world is filled with all sorts of awful crap. So sometimes you need a little bit of a distraction from all that.
Yeah, and that's why I think the importance of having fun and having enjoying life to a point is like you got to, because again, what's the point of living if you're just all grind and no at least a little bit of joy in there,
Yeah,
it's like, yeah, it's cool. Yeah, it's definitely one of those things that unifies people. like I said, something kind of brainless. It's, I mean, it takes a lot of brain, but it's like it's something that doesn't have real world ramifications. It's something we can unite on.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny how people can be like that. But yeah. Was there anything else that you wanted to go into before we end it for tonight?
I can't think of anything. I mean, that's pretty much it when we're fly our pants anyways tonight. So I was like, we definitely went all over the place. For a spectrum from 3D printers to Judaism, Israel, and Noah. I was like
the full gamut. All of the entire human experience condensed into one podcast.
That's what we do, people. That's what we do. Simplify life. We give you something brainless at the end to unify you after we've pushed you into your corners.
Yep. Well, I guess in that case, I guess we'll end it right here and send you on your way back to the arms of your family. All right. Well, thanks a lot, Nick, for joining us. It was quite a time. Quite a time was had by all.
Until we meet again.
Indeed. All right. Well, thank you, audience, for tuning in. We appreciate your viewership, and Snarp Fangle on.